Okay, so I think now we will move on with the recording of this MAH webinar. Next things we're going to cover is a little bit about alert rates and scanning, summary of the IMVO alert management guidance, a little bit about our end use and learn and where we're at with that, a small piece about our alert management system, NMBS alerts. We just also want to tell you what advice we've been giving to end users taking part of the pilot. And then finally, we want to conclude with the ask of yourselves as MAHs and then the opportunity for questions. So we've also included within the presentation, which we will send to you after the session, so you don't need to take notes. We will, there's a glossary in there, and also just some further information about the end of use and learn and the classification of alerts and exceptions. So we just want to give you a quick update on where we're at with alert rates, because we know this is something that as MAHs you're always very interested in. And, you know, we're working towards a target of 0.05. Now, when we look at the last 4 weeks, what we've seen is a bit of a mix between 0.07 and 0.09 at end user alert rate. We tend to focus on that because they're really the situations where a pack has been scanned by a pharmacy, hospital, or wholesaler and generating an alert. The overall alert rate includes the alerts that you would generate yourselves as MAHs when you carry out transactions on your packs against by your OBP connection to the EU hub. So last week we were running at 0.09. So on the face of it, that seems relatively high, but in actual fact, I'll show you some details at the moment of how that alert rate has come about. And you'll see actually, when we drill into it, we are seeing a very positive story of where alerts are at in Ireland. If we compare ourselves with the last available MVO data, the overall alert to scan rate across Europe, published in the latest MVO monitoring report, is 0.18%. Liechtenstein has so few alerts that with rounding, it just rounds down to 0, which is obviously a very nice place to be for them. And then our colleagues in Northern Ireland, there's it running a little bit high. But again, these are weak point figures, so bear in mind that there may be, you know, a wholesaler scanner not working for an hour could push your alert rate up quite substantially in a given week. So, you know, it's important we look at what's causing the alerts as well as the actual number, the rate. If we look at the trend of the alert rate from the 1st of January this year until the 24th of April, you can see there's been a downwards trend, which is very positive, and that's something that we constantly want to keep moving on. And, you know, we will never get to a point where we have no alerts, because there will always things that pop up. But we do want to very much get a lot of this noise out of the system of the avoidable alerts. Looking then at the types of alerts, so what we've done here, we've presented you with data from the beginning of the year. And you'll see actually most of the alerts relate to A7 and A24, which is to do with people trying to scan packs and decommission them, but they're already in the requested state. So these are typically what we would call the double decommission alerts. They arise in 2 main situations. One, the pharmacy is scanning the same pack over and over again, decommissioning it. Or 2, they're trying to scan packs that have been decommissioned in another location. So typically it's where maybe they've borrowed the pack and the pack is decommissioned. It might be, we've seen an example this week of a particular product where packs were exported or sent from France to Ireland and they've all been marked as exported. So everyone trying to decommission those packs here is getting a pack already exported, marked as exported alert. From your own perspective, the A7s, the A24s, the A68s, you're not required to investigate them. So that's something we've agreed with the HPRA. So you can see your investigation load really focuses on the A3s and the A2s. We know the A3s, which is in pack not found, and A2 batch not found. They can be due to data not being uploaded, but they can also be due to scanner and software issues, so that you are required to investigate those types of alerts. So we look at the source of the alerts, and let me just minimize my screen there. So what we do is we try and work out what we believe are the root causes of alerts week on week. And if we look over week 10, week 13, and week 16, we can see a positive story, particularly the end user procedural errors. So that would be things like the double decommission, they're coming down. The software issues, not huge. And often when you see something like in week 16, 110 alerts, that sounds like a lot of alerts, but it's often actually they're focused on 1 or 2 pharmacies. Scanner alerts are pretty rare. So pretty much scanners are not causing problems, which is good. MAH transactions, thankfully, have been very quiet. Our experience is when MAHs have transactions that causes alerts, you often get a lot of alerts. So, for example, someone accidentally marks a pack as locked, or batch as locked twice, can generate lots of alerts. We are seeing a few ongoing issues with data upload and late data upload. And it's really something we would really urge you very strongly to make sure your data is uploaded on time, because that obviously causes problems at pharmacy level when they try to scan a pack and the data is not there. It's something the HPRA is very keen to hear of persistent queries about data not being uploaded, and particularly, they want to know, are the persistent MAHs not doing that? Now, we haven't had cause in recent weeks to contact them with everyone, but that's something they're certainly interested in. I see there is a hand up there, so I don't know whether you want to come off mute or whether you want to type something into the chat. I'll have to, I don't see the chat. Someone might read out the question to me if you want to ask something there. Okay, what I might suggest is if you could maybe hold whatever question you have and we'll come back to it at the end. We'll stop sharing and then we'll be able to see what's going on in the chat, if that's okay, and we can let you come off mute if you want to speak. Intermarket transactions, we have had, these are ongoing issues. What we're seeing primarily at the moment is, as I've mentioned, unlicensed packs coming into Ireland from a couple of other countries where they've actually been marked as exporters in the other countries. So they're unfortunately generating alerts where they've been scanned. So it's a relatively positive picture. And at least with this analysis, we can see where we need to focus the efforts in terms of getting rid of the avoidable alerts. If we look at the overall summary, as I mentioned, the end user alert rate is improving, and I've mentioned the scanner and software not a major issue, procedural errors, they're falling. And I've mentioned all of the most common sources of alerts there in recent weeks. We definitely see alerts with borrowings, so where a pharmacy borrows packs from another pharmacy, they're scanning with alerts. And the other one we've seen is up until the 28th of February, wholesalers, when they verified packs and returns, if they generated alerts, double decommission alerts, they were allowed to put them back into saleable stock. Now that has stopped since the 28th of February, so those packs are no longer going back on the shelves, but we do still see some situations in pharmacies where they would have got packs put on the shelves prior to the 28th of February, but they will wash out of the system over the next few weeks. And then the last one there, actually, we had 300 odd alerts last week because one FMG software provider was doing some testing and their tool was generating alerts. Now, they weren't being seen in end user systems, but they just impacted the overall alert rate. If we look then at the key causes of MAH alerts, so the team had a look here to see where do we see most commonly the MAH alerts coming up. Data upload is obviously where we see a lot of it. Failed or incomplete uploads, redoing partial uploads can cause alerts. Errors in data, so wrong product code, batch number, incomplete data. One thing that they've also flagged, if a multi-market product is not licensed here and you set up ourselves as a market in the EU hub, but you don't upload data, we've seen this happen a few times, this is likely to cause alerts in other markets. So just to be aware of the implications of how you set up your markets in your product master data can lead to alerts inadvertently in a market where those packs aren't actually licensed. I've already mentioned that MAH tends to decommission already decommissioned packs, and often these tend to happen in big batches where someone does a batch and then they do it again. The other thing we want to flag to you is, and this is something we've mentioned a number of times, the manner in which the barcode is printed on the pack can cause alerts. And if it's very close to the linear barcode in particular, or there's not enough white space around it, so what we mean is just simply empty space around the barcode. In the first situation, what can happen is the scanner will pull the data. It's like a Hoover pulling the data from both the 2D barcode and some of the data from the linear barcode. So then immediately you have data that won't match what's in the IMVS. And then similarly, not enough white space, the scanner can misread the barcodes. So just be careful, and it's something to make sure your packaging departments, your artwork departments are aware when designing the packs. You need to think about some of these factors. Now, we know there's a lot of pressure on pack space and you don't want to make packs bigger, but equally you need to be conscious of things with your packaging that could lead to alerts. So it's maybe some internal testing to see, will these packs scan correctly based on this artwork we're proposing. A little bit about scanning rates. So the scanning has been on an upwards trajectory over the last few months. Now, you might see a couple of dips there. You see 1 week of 1.06 million. Now, that was actually a very nice week, but we had 2 public holidays in March for St. Patrick's Day. And also then in the last couple of weeks, we've had Good Friday and Easter Monday. So we would have seen a drop off in scanning in weeks where pharmacies are just closed. But overall, the scanning rate is improving. It's not quite where it should be, but this is the role. It's not IMVO's role to ensure that pharmacists scan. It's the role of the Pharmaceutical Society, which is the pharmacy regulator, or PSI as they're known. And they're actively pursuing non and low scanning pharmacies. And what our role there is, we provide them with reports and scanning activity, and we also support them to resolve any issues relating to scanning that may be impacting pharmacists getting all their scans through to the IMVS. If we look briefly then at the number of packs uploaded to the repository, so we actually have a very big database relative to the size of the market, and it's largely because historically we have very large numbers of joint packs with the UK. So Ireland is roughly 100 million packs per year are sold. So that's kind of our benchmark. But since the data upload started in 2018, and since then, over the last 4 years, almost 900 million packs have been uploaded. What we have seen is post-Brexit, the level of upload has fallen off. So we would have had up to 350 million packs loaded in 2021. I think it was about 230 million last year, and year to date, this year it's running at 71 million packs. So from our point of view, that's positive, because actually the slight drop off in the number of packs uploaded has actually meant some of our solid soft costs have reduced, because there is an element related to the number of packs uploaded. It just gives you an idea, we have seen less multi-market packs post-Brexit. Just briefly to mention to you, there's MVO activity, we're very heavily involved in it. I chair the MVO Alert Management Committee Steering Committee, and this is really all about alert management. And we have a number of pieces of activity going on there. So it's MVO, and that should read NMVOs, are working towards the objective of a pan-European network of national alert management systems connected via an AMS hub. So we'll talk to you in a few moments about NMVS Alerts, which is the alert management system we're using here in Ireland, but you're aware that many of the countries have alert management systems as well. You'll be aware MVO is developing an AMS hub that will allow all these different systems to basically be interconnected. And from your perspective as an MAH, as an OBP, that it'll make it simpler for you to manage alerts across multiple markets, because this network will be in place. So MVO have recently completed a pilot of the AMS hub with OBP systems, and they're now about to start they will start a pilot with the national AMS connected. So a full end-to-end pilot will commence in June. The other piece of work that's going on then is, you might recall we've briefed you before and worked to develop a kind of a harmonized European approach to alert handling, and MVO has a best practice document, and MVO and the NMVOs are collaborating to get NCA support for this document and for the whole idea of having the same procedure for alert handling across Europe. So NCA is obviously the national competent authorities. Here in Ireland, the HPRA obviously are the NCA. So MVO running a number of workshops for NCAs. The NMVOs are involved in presenting at that. We're all having discussions locally with our NCAs on how to try and streamline alert handling and come to a more unified process landscape. Just something else to mention to you very briefly, there is work going on within MVO and with the NMVOs to develop what we call non-FMD list functionality within the EMVS. The idea is if you know a particular batch has got some sort of an exemption, say there's a problem with the barcode, but the HPRA decides you can go ahead and put it on the market, notwithstanding that the barcode data is not correct, because they need to make sure the supply continues. The idea is that these batches would be flagged in the system, and a message will go back to pharmacies when they scan them and get them alerts. There's a reason why this has happened. So there's a piece of work going on in terms of getting NCAs to agree to this functionality, because it does create certain security risks. So that's something that's we're working on quite hard, and I think that would be very useful in terms of dealing with the real life scenarios we see where there are issues with products. We see things accidentally decommissioned to an irreversible state, and the problem is if you destroy those packs, you've no packs to give to patients, and sometimes it's necessary to allow them to be supplied. So again, we'll keep you posted on that. So what I'm going to do for the next few slides, and it is going to be very quick, I am going to run through the IMVO alert management guidance to give you a sense of what's in that guidance and what it means for yourselves. But I'm not going to get into the detail of all the slides. You'll be able to read those yourselves. I just want to highlight the key points. So when we talk about the guidance, what are we talking about? So the document that we have developed to basically set out a framework for alert investigation in Ireland, covering all 5 types of level 5 alerts, whether generated by end user or MAH transactions. So you'll be aware level 5 alerts are the alerts that represent potential falsifications. They're notified to whoever has generated the alerts, so end users or MAHs. They're notified to ourselves, and they're notified to the HPRA as well. So these need to be investigated to identify, is the pack falsified, or is there a root cause that can be something like a procedural issue, a data issue, system issue, or whatever. So we've drawn up this guidance in consultation with stakeholders nationally, and also with the HPRA, and also with the PSI. And what we've done is we've basically followed the approach set out in the IMVO best practice document that I mentioned a moment ago. We've tweaked it very slightly, but basically it's the same process. And particularly in the MAH side, we haven't really deviated from what's in the IMVO document. What we're doing at the moment is, in terms of, we're at the stage in exiting New Zealand, we're in a pilot stage testing out this guidance. And if necessary, we will refine that guidance a little bit further over the next month as we go through the remaining part of the pilot. So what the guidance is trying to do is to define the roles and responsibilities for all parties. So this process flow is defined. So you'll see that when we send out the guidance later. And the whole objective of this is really that we can find out quickly what's going on with an alert. If we find out a root cause, then the pack can be returned to saleable stock as soon as possible. So we don't take the view that packs that generate alerts cannot be supplied to patients. We take the view these packs, something isn't right, something doesn't match. We need to find out what the reason is. If we find out that it's a scanner that's not working, and you fix the scanner and you verify the pack again, it's okay, then you can supply it. If a pharmacist knows that the alert was caused because they've scanned it twice in a few minutes, they can mark that down and they can go ahead and supply the pack. So we only see very limited numbers of packs having to be returned to MAHs for examination, when really we really can't find any sort of a root cause at the end user side. The guidance also describes the process for escalation to the HPRA as a confirmed falsification if no root cause can be found for the alert. So a few things are out of scope of the guidance. So we don't deal with things like the A1 product code unknown alerts. We don't get into obviously HPRA processes. We don't get into prevention. And also we don't get into the whole question of refunds and credit for packs that have to be returned, because that's completely out of scope of the remit of IMVO. So that's something you would need to deal with individually with pharmacies or with wholesalers. So what we're going to do in the next few slides is run through the high level process. Section 5 of the guidance gets into the detail of all of this, and then there's a lot more information in the guidance document if you want to read that. So first of all, when an alert is generated in an end user location, both end users and MAHs start looking at it. On the end user side, they look for two things. One, procedural errors. So have I accidentally double decommissioned it? Did I get it from another pharmacy and it was already decommissioned? If they find that, they document the error. The pack may be supplied so long as there's no reason to suspect it's falsified. Things like the anti-tamper device is fine. It looks fine. They know they got it from a legitimate supplier. If there's a technical issue where the alert relates to a data mismatch and a procedural error has been ruled out. So once again, they fix this, they may verify the pack, and if successful, go ahead and supply it. Now, one thing, again, I mentioned this topic, is just to reiterate to you, because we do find this comes back a few times to us. MAHs are not required to proactively investigate certain categories of alerts that are largely due to end user error. So the A7, A24s and the A68s, unless ourselves at the HPRA ask you to do this. For all other alerts, when you see them generated by an end user, you look for data issues, you look for missing data. You might also look to see, is there some sort of an issue with the EMVS, or some sort of, the guidance gets into the detail of how you do that. You obviously need to generate the alerts generated from your own transactions, but bear in mind, end users are not seeing those alerts. So they, from a patient supply point of view, they're not as critical. What happens then is if after 2 days we haven't heard from either yourselves or the MAH, we will step in at that point to see what's going on. If nothing's been done to investigate the alerts, we will ask you to investigate. So we will ask the end user to look at what's going on their side. If it's something we think is data related, we'll ask you to look into it. If either yourselves or the end users don't give us the help we need to make sure we get those alerts investigated, then we have to escalate it to the relevant NCA. So in your own case, it would be to the HPRA. In the case of pharmacies, it'll be to the PSI. So in terms of helping end users to find out what the issue is, we're basically giving them in their FMD software. There's now a link in there that links to information on our website that they can actually go down through a process to work out what's going on. We also, and we're doing this already, and you'll be familiar with this, we're constantly monitoring the IMVS for large numbers of alerts, usual patterns of alerts. We look at products, we look at batches, we look at end user locations, we look at end user locations we know that are used in a particular FMD software provider. And if we see something that suggests either, say, a data issue, the data has been uploaded, or we see, for example, something that's just, if you see lots of alerts suddenly happening in a single pharmacy, that could suggest a scanner issue. You see lots of alerts in 3 or 4 pharmacies we all know use the same software, it could be a software issue. So we'll either talk to yourselves, depending on the root cause, yourselves or the end user, or if we see it's a software issue, we might just go directly to the software provider and try and get those sorted out quickly. Now, at the end user side, if they have done the investigation and they can't find anything on their site, what they have been told to do is withhold the pack from saleable stock and basically wait to hear back from yourselves. So you will either come back and say, you found the root cause and you fixed it. For example, you've uploaded the data, or you need to see the pack because you can't find anything. Now, in terms of the communications around that, obviously you won't be in direct contact with end users. So that's why we'd like people to use our NMBS alert management system, but we'll explain that in a few moments. The HPRA, the pharmacies had said to us that they basically just want to send the packs back to the wholesalers if it's alerts. The HPRA is very clear that that can't happen. The HPRA have said the packs with alerts must be retained in the location where they were scanned and not returned to the wholesaler as part of the standard business process. So the only time they would be returned is where you as MAH say, I want to examine that pack, and you basically give advice on how that is to happen. And that's very similar to what you would do with the one for product quality complaints. From your side then, in terms of your investigation steps, if you have generated the alerts during your own transactions, you find out what's going on and you tell us. If there's an alert on an end user location and it's not an A7, an A24 or an A68, you check is it due to data, and if so, you correct us. If you want a pack from a photo of the pack from the end user, that's absolutely fine, and we've provided those on a few occasions with support from end users. So that might be enough to tell you that the pack is fine, or you might actually look at the photo and say, well, actually that's fake. So then we immediately arrange a confirmed falsification. So if having looked at the photo, you can't see a data issue, you might just check, is there a problem with the EU hub that might somehow mean that the alert is caused due to some system issue? And you then are required to give us feedback within 2 working days. And we'll let the end user know if they're not using NMVS alerts. If you haven't sorted out what's going after 2 working days, you do need to let us know at that point and give us regular feedbacks until such time as the matter is resolved. Now, if after all of the investigations, data, procedural and technical issues have been ruled out, the pack is now confirmed to be a suspected falsification. At this stage, we would ask you to return the pack for examination. And again, we've mentioned that you would ask the end user how to do that. If you cannot confirm having examined the pack, which may include analysis of the pack, genuine, then it's considered a falsification. And only at this stage is the HPRA informed. So the HPRA have told us they do not want to be informed of suspected falsifications. They only want to be informed having gone through the whole process and having come to the conclusion that the pack is a confirmed falsification. So there was a lot of discussion with them about this. They had a lot of discussion internally about whether or not they wanted to be informed earlier, and they have come to the conclusion now. You only need to notify the HPRA when it's a confirmed falsification. We've already mentioned that you may already know from, without ever getting the pack, from looking at a photo that the pack is a confirmed falsification. And again, You would also, in that situation, then ask for the pack to be sent back, even though you already know it's falsification. Now, communications during alert investigations. I've mentioned NMVS alerts is the system we're using. The guidance describes how this will support alert investigations and communications. So to be clear, the HPRA is strongly supportive of NMVS alerts being used to support alert investigations. And in fact, the guidance is encouraging all people involved in alert investigation to use this. In the event that someone chooses not to use NMVS alerts, then we really hope that all MAHs will use it, but end users, one or two of them are saying, I'm not going to use another system, no way. We will facilitate communications by email, but if, for example, you want to talk to an end user who's not using NMVS alerts, you need to email us. We'll email the end user, they'll reply and we'll go back to them. So it's not optimal, but we're hoping that as they become more familiar with NMVS alerts, they may start to use it. But we'll do whatever it takes to make sure that that communication flow works. One of the things we are doing is we are setting up a service desk for end users, which will include extended out of hours supports. We have a call center who will take calls in the evening until 9 p.m. and on Saturdays and Sundays. And where it's possible to help the end user, we will get back to them. Now, we know sometimes, for example, we may not be able to get hold of yourselves to get an answer, in which case we'll have to wait till the following day. But we will have that. They will be able to phone a friend and find, at least get the process initiated if they need help, or the call center will also deal with the email queries out of hours. So I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Colin, who's going to take you through the plan for the ending of use and learn in Ireland. So I'll just stop sharing there and Colin. Thank you.
Thanks, Leonie. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm just going to talk briefly about the plan for ending use and learn of FMD in Ireland, which you are probably aware use and learn for everybody ends on the 30th of May. Next, so I'm just going to try and advance that slide. Yeah, so without getting into it in great detail, we started the ending of use and learn with phase 1 in sorry, that's after
something there, apologies.
Stop sharing.
Yeah, let me put it back up. Sorry, Con, do you want to just take it there again?
Yeah, I just need to ask for control again. So, as I was saying, we started in September 2021. We moved into phase 2 in early September as well, where the red, amber, green cycle changes for wholesalers. That has also worked very well, and we see great engagement with the process with our wholesalers. Moving to phase 3, the use and learn ends for return to wholesalers. So as you can see, that all alerts generated when scanning returned packs must be investigated and suspected falsifications ruled out. That's the issue that Leonie just mentioned briefly, where we do anticipate and are seeing some legacy returns that would have been returned pre the 28th of February in the system as well. Phase 4, the red, amber, green changes for pharmacies and hospitals. This has had a significant impact on user behavior at end user level, where we see the actual fact that they're getting the red, amber, green alerts means that a lot more attention is being paid to alerts, and that has greatly assisted our reduction in alerts. Phase 5 is where we are at the moment. It started on the 14th of March, and essentially it's to pilot alert handling procedures with pharmacies, hospitals and wholesalers. And just a bit more of a breakdown where we are at the moment in terms of the end of April. We're about here in the timeline. And what we've done, we have a small group of MAHs, wholesalers, hospitals and pharmacies have participated in a small pilot which started earlier this month. That's been running at the moment. We've got some great learnings from that already, and we're starting a series of webinars. We started yesterday with wholesalers, MAHs today, and more dealing with hospitals and pharmacies, starting a series of webinars running through the month of May with hospitals and pharmacies, where we want to get as many people as we can and as many locations as we can into a pilot that will run between essentially now and the end of use and learn. So that pilot ends on the 27th of May and use and learn ends on the 30th of May. The next sort of milestone is on phase 6, which is On the 9th of May, all alerts generated by wholesalers must be investigated and suspected falsifications ruled out before the relevant pack may be returned to saleable stock or supplied. So effectively, use and learn ends for wholesalers for all activities on the 9th of May. And then phase 7, which is the end of use and learn, all alerts generated by pharmacies and hospitals must be investigated and suspected falsification ruled out before the relevant pack may be supplied. And that's where we get into the absolute requirement for end users to be in a position to investigate and identify where possible the root cause, but also where we rely on MAHs to identify and to investigate and identify where root causes may be associated, particularly with data upload issues, so that that information can be fed back into the system and that the end user can make a timely and accurate decision in order to allow them get that pack back to saleable or supplyable stock. So in terms of the value that we feel the pilot can offer MAHs at the moment, so obviously our hope is that we will get a large number of end users at wholesaler, but particularly pharmacy and hospitals participating in this pilot in the coming weeks as we get out of use and learn. The priority is for them to develop fluency in all aspects of our systems and alert handling, but it also means that MAHs can test your own internal procedures with the benefit now of having feedback from pharmacies, hospitals and wholesalers on individual alerts, which has not been routinely available to date. And that feedback, we hope, will reside within NMVS alerts. So obviously there's further opportunity to gain more experience with NMVS alerts. I'm just leading then to discuss briefly about NMVS alerts. I'm not going to get into the full details of how an alert is fully investigated within it, but what it is, it's a collaborative tool, and we know there are a lot of you already collaborating with the system, for which we're very grateful, and we are very receptive to user feedback for NMVS alerts as well. So if there is feedback and learnings from your experience with it to date, please do send it to us. It's a collaborative tool which facilitates the efficient handling of alerts by allowing all the relevant parties to manage, track and document alerts, providing real-time information on the status of alerts based on the information entered by the end user, the MAH and or ourselves. We can quickly communicate with other parties about an alert while preserving that end user anonymity, which is a core principle of the IMVS. This is something that is very important, and we feel that this system is the single best opportunity for us to maintain that anonymity, but to allow the flow of information from end user to MAH work most efficiently and effectively. It also allows the maintenance of an audit trail for individuals' own actions for inspection purposes in the event that someone does need to go back and look at how a particular investigation was handled. System is web-based, may be accessed on a 24-hour basis. The end user can upload a pack photo if you want, if the MAH has requested it. NCAs, the HPRA, may also opt to use NMVS alerts, and certainly in the event of confirmed falsification, the HPRA in our case does have access to NMVS alerts. All level 5 alerts generated by end users when they scan your products are automatically recorded in NMVS alerts. So when that alert happens, because it's a level 5 alert, which are the ones that we feel are not that we feel, that we know are the ones that do come with the risk of a falsified pack, they are automatically uploaded and populated into NMVS alerts. How you access it, and again, we already know that some of you are, you can set up an account, which certainly would be, from our experience, the preferred option at MAH level, is to create an account in NMVS alerts. It's free of charge for a basic user account. You can log in to see a list of all your own level 5 alerts, and I'll just show you what that screen looks like in a moment. You can report any information that you have to add about the alert. So again, you know that the data, for example, wasn't uploaded. That means you can not only deal with that alert, but it also creates the opportunity and potential for that information to be associated with other alerts relating to the same data information. And you can resolve alerts where the investigation is complete and you are satisfied that you have identified the root cause, and MAHs can click the resolve button in order to deal with that alert and close it off as resolved. Premium OBP or MAH licenses do also allow access to extra features such as batch level action. So where there's a data upload issue associated with a batch, the premium level will provide MAHs with the opportunity to manage alerts at batch level and multi-level selection, and the ability to see your alerts in all countries where you're an MAH, as opposed to only in the national market with the free license. The alternative of not having an account is when a level 5 alert is generated, automated emails can be issued to the user with a link to alert to the alert record in NMVS alerts. So it's not necessary to have an account in NMVS alerts to receive access to a link. And that link can also be used to report information about the alert, to populate data, and to send photos. But certainly our experience at MAH level would be the setup of the account is probably preferable. Just in terms of closing bulk alerts, as I mentioned, currently MAHs with the basic free account in NMVS alerts cannot resolve bulk alerts, i.e. those related alerts on the same batch. IMVO can resolve bulk alerts for you. To request this, email us at alert.support@imvo.ie with the root cause, the alert IDs of the relevant alerts, or the batch ID for alerts which are raised on an entire batch, and a member of our ops team can assist in closing those bulk alerts in NMVS alerts. NMVS alerts release 3 will be released during the month of May 2022. It will facilitate full integration with the new EU AMS hub that Leonie referenced a moment ago. And it will also provide, there is also an end-to-end pilot of NMVS alerts with the AMS hub commencing late May into June in 2022. And Slovenia and Cyprus are the two countries that are going to use their instances of NMVS alerts as part of that pilot. Just finally, what does it look like when an MAH logs into their account? They can go in, they can search for their alerts within a time scale, within the error code, serial number, the product name, the alert ID. So all this information that's being fed back to you through your alert system. And also then you can click on each individual alert and go in to investigate. Firstly, to see has someone else, either at end user or IMVO level, investigated and populated their aspect of the investigation to the point that they may have identified a root cause. Or you can go in and indeed you can populate your section of the alert with your investigation and findings of a root cause. And where you're satisfied that you have identified the root cause, you can indeed tick that as resolved. As part of the resources that we will provide after this webinar over the course of the coming days, there will be a video of a step-by-step walkthrough of exactly what that looks like. So now what I'm going to do is hand you back to Leonie, where she will talk to you about advice given to end users taking part in the pilot.
Yeah. Okay, I suppose keep in mind that while we're still in the pilot phase, the advice continues to be to pharmacies that they may supply packs that generate alerts unless they've reason to believe that they could be falsified or been tampered with. And I suppose we're conscious of the fact that from your point of view, that limits perhaps your ability to investigate that pack if we're not finding any standard root causes for it. So what we have asked end users to do in this situation is where they go ahead and supply the pack, even though the root cause isn't known at that stage, to take some photographs to help ourselves and yourselves with the investigation. And we've been particularly clear to ask them to provide photos with the 2D barcode and the human readable text on the pack, you know, bearing in mind that that may be printed on different faces of the pack if you're dealing with a very small pack. We've asked them to upload the photo to NMVS alerts or to email it to ourselves. And if they email it to us, we'll send it on to yourselves. Now, we can't guarantee that pharmacies will provide photos in these situations, but we certainly have asked them to do that. And if you do need photographs at any stage for packs, please do come and tell us, and we'll make sure that happens. If you're not getting anywhere, for example, communicating that request via NMVS alerts. Exempt medicinal products, or ULMs, unlicensed medicines. Now, there's been a lot of discussions about these over the last few weeks between ourselves and the HPRA. We also had a webinar with wholesalers yesterday, and the question has come up again: what do you do with unlicensed medicines or exempt medicinal products? These where they have 2D barcodes on them and they're coming from other markets, they are challenging from an F&D perspective, as the data may not be found when they're scanned, leading to alerts. And what we've done is we have had discussions with the HPRA and we have developed advice on how to handle these packs, depending on where they originate from. But what we are doing is monitoring very closely what this advice looks like in practice and whether it needs to be amended. We are conscious that the European Commission, that strictly speaking legally, unlicensed medicines are out of scope of FMD, but the Commission's Q&A and safety features does specifically reference them and does specifically say that it is strongly recommended that these packs be decommissioned where they have safety features. So with that in mind, this is what we have got to in relation to our advice on exempt medicinal products. So if the pack is coming from an EEA country, so that's EU and Iceland, Liechtenstein and Norway, the recommendation is to scan, bearing in mind it's a recommendation, it's not mandatory. And the point being that here, if you have these packs and that assuming that the data has been uploaded correctly wherever they've come from, the EMVS will locate the data via an intermarket transaction. And one of the things we've had to remind end users here is the FMD software, their FMD software will not display the pack name, form, strength, etc. on screen, because the IMVS, we only have that additional data for packs that have been uploaded to the Irish system. We don't have it for packs that are in other markets. We will have the 4 basic data elements via the intermarket transaction, but we can't also display to the pharmacy software the additional information that you upload to your product master data, like the name, form, strength, etc. We have told pharmacies that they can identify the IMT alert from the 2-letter country code in the alert ID, so it won't be IE. So for example, if the pack was scanned against the Maltese system and the pack will have MT in that. What we've said to them is if they can't find a root cause of an alert for these packs, to contact ourselves, because what we do is we will follow up with the NMBO and the other market in relation to matters such as data upload issues. So for example, the team here in IMVO has weekly calls with our colleagues in Malta because there's many intermarket alerts between our 2 markets. And we will say, for example, well, it looks to us like the data is missing for those packs, and they will go off and talk to yourselves. So that's something we try and do to get these sorted out. If the packs come from outside the EEA, so other than the UK, the recommendation is not to scan these packs. So a good example would have been the early COVID vaccines that arrived into the Irish market. Some of them came from the US, some came from Switzerland. So our advice to people, they had 2D barcodes on them. So the advice is not to scan these, because if they are scanned, they will generate a product unknown exception if scanned. And sometimes, again, giving people some advice on how to identify these packs, they may, for example, not always, have a non-EU manufacturer name and address, and sometimes they don't have an anti-tamper device if that's not mandatory in the market where they've come from. Now, the UK only packs, these are very tricky, we are finding, because post-Brexit, UK only packs which are serialized may or may not have data uploaded to the MVS. Now, MVO is strongly recommending for these packs, if they're serialized, that you do upload the data. And certainly from our perspective, we would strongly support that advice, because that really eliminates problems with these packs being scanned. If the data has been uploaded, the packs should scan correctly unless there's some sort of procedural scan or software issue in the pharmacy. If the data has not been uploaded, then we could see alerts. So, as I say, we are conscious that this is very much something we're going to have to feel our way through over the next few weeks. And if you've got any feedback yourselves in relation to any of this, we'd be very interested to hear it. We know the HPRA is running seminars for GDP and GMP compliance seminars on Tuesday. And we know, for example, the exempt medicinal products is certainly something wholesalers have indicated in advance they're interested in discussing. So we'll be liaising closely with the HPRA on this one. So coming then to the ask of MAHs as we come to the end of the webinar, I suppose the big thing we say to everyone is really the best way to handle alerts is to reduce them, get rid of the ones that don't need to be there in the first place, because that reduces the work for everyone. So from your own perspective, check that the data has been uploaded correctly and on time. So either scan 1 pack per batch before you release it to the supply chain, or you might ask your primary wholesaler to do this for you. You need to bear in mind that under the delegated regulation, you're actually legally obliged to make sure that your data has been uploaded. So, you know, it's something that could come up in an inspection. What procedures do you have to make sure that your data has been uploaded? One of the things that we have come across in the early stages of exiting Use and Learn, the first phase, we had primary wholesalers scanning packs on a sample basis to check the data was correct. And one of the things we did identify was sometimes packs arrive into the Irish market, into the primary wholesaler prior to batch release and prior to data upload. And they were scanning them then, and that was generating alerts. So if you do send packs to your primary wholesaler prior to batch release and data upload, make sure you tell them that the data hasn't been uploaded so they know this and they don't scan them. If you're receiving large numbers of alerts on batches that you've uploaded to the IMVS, we can check for you if this batch is actually visible to us. So sometimes you think you've uploaded the data, but you haven't. And in that situation, we can tell you, no, it's there or it's not there. And if it's not there, then you can re-upload it. Obviously, it's really important to analyze your own transactions that lead to multiple alerts. So for example, if you see patterns of duplicate decommissioning, important to take action to prevent it and obviously correct it. And that's something, again, the HPRA is likely to be looking at. What are your procedures for these things? You know, what analysis do you do? Do you identify the need for any CAPAs to make sure it doesn't happen again? Obviously, help us to resolve alerts quickly. So as soon as you become aware of data issues, please sort them out. We are aware within some companies, it does seem, talking to our colleagues across Europe, that where stabilization periods have ended, those markets tend to get prioritized for getting data of those issues sorted out first. It's really important for us that we really try and keep the number of MAH alerts to a minimum. One of the things that pharmacies constantly throw out is a complaint about FMD. Well, how can we get it right if the MAHs don't upload their data? We've seen huge efforts by MAHs to get the data upload right. We see very few data-related errors, but it's really important we could try and keep those down as low as possible. So hopefully we're really only looking at an odd scanner ratio, an odd soft ratio in community pharmacy, and maybe repeated decommission, and we can sort it out. And that'll keep the alert burden down for us all, but also then when the alerts are generated, that they are quickly sorted out. And after we exit the use and learn period, you know, where packs don't have alternatives available, if you don't get your data uploaded, patients may not get their packs, which is obviously a problem. And also then, if, for example, you're a generic company and say your packs are generating alerts because your data hasn't been uploaded, what will happen then is the pharmacy will simply turn to another generic. So if there's commercial reasons why it's really important, you make sure your data is there. You don't want to become known as the brands that generate the alerts. The HPRA, again, as I've mentioned earlier, want us to tell them if there's repeated patterns of alerts for particular MAHs. We haven't had to do that for a while, and it's something we certainly don't want to have to do. So again, your cooperation getting the alerts sorted out would be really important. And again, then to use NMBS alerts to tell us basically if you've found a root cause on a particular batch, let us know as soon as possible and let us know when the data has been uploaded. And by using NMBS alerts to this, it means that you can very quickly address a lot of alerts and save yourselves a lot of bother, but also I'd say it would be very helpful for ourselves and for end users. So just another couple of quick points before we move to Q&A. If you haven't already done so, please tell us who your single point of contact is for alerts, and also a backup spot for alerts. You can designate whoever you want. We are not going to tell you that it must be the MAH or that it must be regulatory if they're in a different affiliate, or that it must be the serialization. It's whoever in your company manages alerts and needs to know about alerts, you tell us. And we do need a backup. We would also suggest, if possible, that you use a generic email address so it's not linked with an individual. So if they go on holidays, we don't know who to talk to. It's also really important that you notify us if the HPRA approves a batch specific request where there's likely to be an FMD impact. So for example, if you have a batch, we saw one at Christmas where a particular batch had been marked as destroyed, and the HPRA gave approval on the batch specific request for those packs to be placed on the market, but we weren't told about it. So we were finding all these alerts. So again, we can inform end users if they get alerts what the issue is. Again, if you get an exemption to continue marketing the product notwithstanding an error in the data and the barcode, again, just you need to tell us the name and the batch ID. Really important to make sure that the product name and the IMVS matches what's in the pack. We've seen a number of situations where they don't. So what's been entered into the product master data in the hub doesn't match what's written on the pack, and that confuses end users. they just don't understand why those errors are made. So, these are human data entry fields in the project master data, and we do see that errors occur. One final point, and this is something that we've discussed with the HPRA, is the recall functionality in the EMVS is very much designed on the assumption that if a product has been recalled, it's been done at full batch level, so you can only apply the recall designation at batch level, and also that it's a full recall to pharmacy level. The reality is that sometimes you have a situation where, say, half a batch has gone to Ireland and half, I'll give the UK pre-Brexit, MHRA said no recall, or said a recall, HPRA decided no recall. So then you have a situation where there's a difference. The other thing is we see sometimes that there's only a recall to wholesaler level. So if you mark the back in the batch is recalled in the EMVS, the problem then is pharmacies will then be getting a recalled message even though the pack hasn't been recalled at pharmacy level. So bearing all of that in mind, only mark a batch is recalled in the EMVS if the batch has been recalled to pharmacy level. Don't mark it as recalled if it's only to wholesaler level, as this will lead to pack recalled warnings in pharmacies and hospitals. Obviously, the wholesaler will be aware of the recall because the normal recall notification procedure will be going on anyway, so they shouldn't find themselves in a situation of potentially supplying packs that are marked as recalled. So we've given you then some just some useful websites, and we've given you links to various pieces of information and email addresses. We've also mentioned there are a Twitter account and a LinkedIn, and we intend to use those to communicate short, sharp updates over the next few weeks. So, do follow us there. And I think that's it. So I'm actually going to stop sharing now, and we'll just move into the Q&A. And